So this is Emily Jennings and Anna Brink, and our screencast of Technology Has a Message.
The first point we considered was the beginning that states technology embeds a message, which we found to be interesting and an important point, which we kind of brought up in class before, that there's more to technology than just the tool aspect. And we both appreciated that that he mentions we require discernment when we're dealing with technology. So anything that's new or anything we do really does require discernment, and I think especially technology when it's something that's new and we haven't dealt with before. And then at first I was kind of confused. I'm really used to technology being defined as mostly a tool or just a tool that you can use in different ways, and thinking more along those lines that how we use it affects it, not the tool itself. But as we began to read through this article, I started to realize that the technology, just the type of technology it is, that what it allows you to do and not do, does really start to affect you, and it transforms us. So
we both really struggled with technology as a response to God, and we were struggling with how technology is like directly a response to God. We more discussed about how we thought maybe using technology, maybe or how we use technology would be a reflection of our faith in God and our Christian beliefs, rather than like technology purely being a response to God.
And maybe even the development of technology, that could be a response to God. How we're developing it depends on what we view our own capabilities to be and what would be good for us to be able to do. But the actual using of technology, that is a response, in our opinions, maybe more in like what technology we choose, how much we use of it, and what we do with it. And then, so we already talked a bit about having structure and direction, and it is interesting to consider how it is value-laden. I thought he was a little vague in talking about it being economic or legal, aesthetic, different values. And we discussed a bit about how economic would be, certain people have access to this technology, others don't. And then we thought maybe aesthetic had to do even with you're looking only at someone or something, so the real object is hidden from our view, and you can use Photoshop sometimes, and you just have a disconnect from what the visual compared to the actual.
When I was reading this part, I was reminded of my visit to Holland Christian, and like when it talks about like the values making some things possible, like it made a lot of more things possible for Holland Christian and the different things they're able to do in their classes, but at the same time it made others more difficult. So like if their technology did happen to fail, like they had a lot more difficult time running their classes and getting their homework done. So I thought it was cool how that like could apply directly there.
Now, we both found it interesting that the content distracts, especially that last sentence in the paragraph about it being a juicy piece of meat carried by the burglar. And besides recognizing that the content does distract, most of the time we're focused on just reading or just watching and not really thinking about the medium that is portraying this, I started thinking about what sort of values were part of previous technologies, since we can look back. And it seems that print has the technological value of individual understanding being highly prized, compared to back when we had oral communities where everything was spoken and you had to rely on each other, that independence. And again, the automobile just really values independence, being able to drive yourself somewheres or get your family somewheres.
The next part we talked about was the part that suggested that once technology starts, it's really hard to stop it, or almost impossible. And we talked about how, like, looking to the future, like, is it going to be mandatory that, like, everyone has a phone and that everyone has even an iPhone, just to, like, keep up with, like, the industry of technology? And, like, how is that going to change our society and the like effects it'll have. Yeah, so is it just going to, like the sentence right here, however, the attitude of the technological imperative does manifest itself when educators are pressured to adopt computer technology simply for its own sake or just because we need to keep up. So we both thought that was a really like interesting approach to technology and like the effects that it could have on the future.
And the ability to get a job, just like now you need a suit and tie or professional dress, which however many years ago wasn't in existence because we didn't have factories to make that quality of clothing. Will there one day be a time when you have to have an iPhone or feel the pressure to have one? So we both agree that technology is not completely sovereign, but it can definitely put a lot of pressure and in some areas be a deciding factor about whether or not you get a job.
Mm-hmm. The next part we talked about is that like having internet access, and how they talked about how before it used to be allowing you to go deep, and now it just allows you to get surface level deep on on a whole lot more topics. And we talked about how we think that like as affecting students that they can like they know a whole lot about a little bit, and we were talking about how we wish like it would allow students to like want them to go deeper into stuff, but we feel like it's still gonna, even though the opportunity is there, students are still only gonna go surface level deep.
Or at least tend to go surface level and shallow. And then after that, we discussed the multitasking very briefly because we feel like we've really heard a lot about it recently, that it doesn't actually work. And the following example, though, I found was interesting about the screen-based technology being used in a classroom. In one study, they found improved visual spatial skills, but other skills like deep processing were lacking. So there could be a lot of factors involved in that, like such as the way the teacher teaches the class, how much the computers are used as a tool, or how much they're used just to give you like an aid and allow you not to think for yourself. Mm-hmm. Could really shape that, but it is interesting. Technology is going to give you pros, but we have to remember the cons also.
Yeah, going along with that, I think we talked about how using technology, it allows you to like work on and improve different skills than in the past, which is when we spend a lot of time in class talking about like 21st century skills, and like how like deep processing or like inductive analysis might not be as important of skills in the future, whereas like visual spatial skills might, and like problem solving I think is a huge one that comes along with technology, as it's still a fairly new like concept in many of our like students' lives, that like as they learn to use it they have to do a lot of problem solving to figure it out completely.
Mm-hmm. And then we also discussed the becoming more like machines as we use the machines more often. And I thought it seemed a little strong, but I think it is trying to make a point that what we use does affect us in the long term and eventually will shape us. So if we use a technology that encourages shallow thought, even if you can do other than shallow thought, we may develop as a culture a more shallow thought process. And go ahead.
The last thing we talked about was just how as a Christian school we have like a responsibility to see technology as good or bad, and that we can't focus on one or the other, but if we are to like use it and discern it, we need to think about both sides of it. And one thing that really stuck out to us was that students should have a variety of media diet, or variety in their media diet, and that they should not just be like focused on like one form of media or one form of technology, but they should be exposed to many kinds, so that when they like leave school and they go out into the workplace, they're not just solely focused on one, but that they like are acquainted with others, or like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I really liked the last sentence about being intentional about shaping hearts and minds for service in God's kingdom. And I think if we keep that as our main focus, we may make mistakes by using technology, but ultimately, if we're focused on heading in that goal and not just shoving technology in because that's the thing that everyone's requiring now, that we will be able to benefit the students and not cause them harm. So we just have to keep the main thing in focus and not let technology become an idol.